The following presentation was part of a forum entitled Impacts of Gas Drilling with High-Volume Hydrofracking. The forum was held at the high school auditorium in Trumansburg, New York on December 8, 2010, and sponsored by the following organizations: the Ulysses Gas Drilling Advisory Board, the Coalition to Protect New York, and the Committee to Preserve the Finger Lakes.
Our third speaker is Don Barber. Don is a 7-term Caroline town supervisor, and he chairs the Tompkins County Council of Governments. He earned a BS and an MS in ceramic engineering at Alfred University. He received a U.S. patent while working at Corning Incorporated as an engineer and then as an engineering manager. In 1983, Don founded Sunnybrook Builders. This is a residential construction firm in Ithaca. With his wife, Don owns Rosebarb Farm Guest Cottage and a 75-acre organic farm in Caroline, which they operate with draft horses.
Good evening. And first I want to thank our sponsors for this lovely event. And second, I want to thank all of you. You had many other things you could choose to do tonight, whether it's watch TV or the basketball game next door, but you decided to come here. So I want to thank you for joining us. I've heard from local officials in Pennsylvania that the changes that have happened to their community as a result of gas drilling are dramatic. And the one thing they wish they had was time to plan and prepare. And luckily, in New York State, we do. Shale gas extraction using high-volume slickwater hydrofracking is a major industrial process that both Sandra and Lou have articulated. And there are powerful forces looking to extract shale gas from our region. I'll be talking about the physical processes and the impacts on our communities and how they affect our communities. Tonight I'll be talking about the differences between shale gas extraction and conventional gas extraction, then the impacts on our communities, and then finally preparing for change. So gas extraction has been going on just north of us in Seneca County for decades, and that's conventional gas drilling. And their communities have not faced dramatic change, and yet there's quite a bit of fuss about this shale gas extraction. So gas extraction comes from pockets in both the limestone and sandstone formations, and like the Trenton Black River. But in Marcellus, it comes from a shale. And so both involved drilling a borehole, having pipelines connecting the gas wells to the delivery system, compressor stations, and some amount of hydrofracking. But that's where the similarity ends, and it's important to understand the differences that take place. Something different is happening underground. With Marcellus Shale, it's everywhere, whereas the other formations, the gas is in pockets. Marcellus requires regular, high-volume, heavy-pressure stimulation called fracking, whereas the other formations require possibly one or a small low-volume stimulation. And stimulation, as Sandra spent a bit of time talking about, opens passages in the rock formation. She talked about how the shale is like, I was going to use a frozen sponge, but I like her term better, a frozen spritzer from Champagne, always requiring fracking to release the gas. The underground differences that then require a grander and different and riskier process than to release the gas. And all those processes originate on the Earth's surface where we live. One highlight that I will not show in my slides, but I will just mention that when you go north of here, you'll see a lot of these little plastic tanks collecting the produced liquid from the well. And that produced liquid will go back into that well because it came from a hole, a cavity. And for shale gas, there is no cavity. As Sandra mentioned, this liquid has to find another place to go. So right off the bat, we can see with this shale gas pad, it doesn't look anything like what conventional gas drilling looks like to the north. We see much larger pad size. We see larger retention ponds. And both require quite a bit of excavation. And you'll notice, if you look closely, the proximity of neighbors. And we'll be talking about this later. And this is a 3-well pad, and you'll notice there's some economies going on here because there's one large pond to hold water for mixing the frac fluid that then is injected into the earth. I got to do this twice, sorry. All right. The next slide then shows change in the countryside. And you'll notice in this slide there are 5 pads with access roads to them, as well as you can see the tree-removed paths where the buried gas lines are passing. You'll also see, if you look down to the bottom left-hand corner, some mining that's going on for rock and soil that's needed to support the pads and the roads that are being built. And again, you'll see the proximity of residences and how the pads are placed around existing features like roads and buildings. Now, this is what happens if there are no impediments. This is in federal land in Jonas, Wyoming, and shows what a complete build-out looks like. And this, again, is in the Allegheny forest, and it shows a patchwork of roads and pads and gas line pipelines and the forest in the forest area, and this is at or near complete build-out. So we're going to meet the frackers. Shale gas fracking is a quantum leap in scale from gas and the standard formations. And you see that it's not the usual well we've been experiencing. There's massive heavy truck traffic we'll talk about. There's massive drilling pressures. There's massive wastewater. And there's 21st century technology. So this is a picture of a fracking site. And if you spend your time counting, there are 25 fracking trucks building up pressure. Due to the physical structure of the shale and the changes in structure caused by hydrofracking, as Lou mentioned, there's a steep decline in the curve of natural gas production over time. And so that fracking trucks will return several times to this site to refrac. Now this shows a pad where there are no holding ponds around, and if you count the blue containers around the outside edge, there are 90 of those holding water. Now this is a great shot of the fracking process, and I'm sure that the picture captures for you the sound and the smell of the fracking process. And again, recall the close proximity of some of the houses we saw in previous slides to this type of operation. So this is a familiar site from Seneca County. However, for conventional gas drilling, there's 1 well per pad, and we're talking about 6 or more for the shale gas. So this now I want to move from talking about the differences between conventional and shale gas drilling to the impacts on our community. Fracking trucks. The estimates are, and the experience is showing, we need about 1,200 tankers per well. And if there's 6 wells per site, that's 7,200 trips of these little beauties down our roads. Our country roads are not designed. They actually were the way that horse and buggy got from farm to mill. And whenever there was a hole or a mud area in these roads, we would throw in rocks in that area. And then we started using Model Ts, and we threw rocks in whenever there was a soft area. And finally, we got to pick up some light-duty trucks, and we started putting gravel on so that we could carry these loads safely. And then, as we got faster cars, we started putting some pavement on top. But this is the surface of a road. It's not designed. And you can see from this site here where they have not started fracking yet and bringing water trucks in, that just the road traffic has already made the road start to deteriorate. And this is a complete road failure. The base that was there has been completely destroyed, and now the soil underneath is oozing out the side. And of course, accidents do happen. I think Sandra did a good job of articulating that. With more vehicle trips, there's more chances for accidents and more work for emergency service personnel, which in most of Tompkins County are volunteers. And then the question that Sandra posed is, what if this was filled with fracking chemicals or produced liquid? Then we would need a very rapid response from a hazmat team. Sorry for the drama here, but this is a gas. We're working with high pressures and a flammable material, and accidents will happen. Equipment failures, there's human error. Again, emergency response team is trained as necessary for these type of situations in our community. And moving on to gas pipelines, this is what a pipeline looks like in preparation, and some of it actually is being set in the ground. The area around this, you can see the trees have been removed and will need to stay that way as long as this gas line is in operation. I just heard today on a webinar about activity in Bradford County. They are planning to complete 500 miles of pipeline in their town. I guess this slide says it all. Light pollution, whenever they're drilling, it's a 24/7 operation. And then there are compressor stations that need to be sited around to add pressure to the line and help deliver the gas to market. Again, they operate 24/7. And this is just a picture of an environmentally sensitive area, something somebody might think was actually worth going to see. And you can see that the gas industry will be competing with ecotourism. And if we refer back to the slide I showed earlier about Allegheny State Forest, again, hunting would be impacted as well whenever gas industry is working in a forested area. And I like this slide because you can imagine the effect of light and noise that we discussed earlier on the quality of life in this neighborhood. I don't have a picture for this, but I want to just discuss briefly housing. We've heard from our neighbors to the south that rental housing is a very tight supply at this point in time where the gas industry has moved in, and it's causing problems for the current tenants, not being able to afford rent or not be able to finding a place. We also saw an article just within the last couple of weeks in the Ithaca Journal about a man camp being constructed because there just is not enough area for people, people coming in to work in the gas lines to live. So if you take housing in addition to the environmental areas, the light and the sound, the infrastructure, both roads and pipelines, and the effect on businesses, whether it's in competition or in some case helping businesses like small service businessmen that can help with repairs and so on that the gas companies need, there will be impacts. Economic impacts in our community. And so we need to discuss a plan to mitigate these impacts. And so when they come to the town, we will be prepared. So referring to the first comment I made about Pennsylvania, saying that we should take the time to prepare, we need to recognize, and I'm sure we all do, that communities, just like the Shale, are fractured. There are people feeling very strongly on both sides of this issue, but it's in all of our best interest to find ways to bridge our differences. Entire communities need to come together, to become involved, because the change we described earlier will impact everyone. The noise, the traffic, the sound, the light will affect everyone, although maybe not to the same extent. If it's not gas, it'll be something else. So the time we spend working on this is not a wasted exercise. We should find areas of agreement, develop plans, and work on a toolbox of issues and regulations, not regulations, but activities that local governments can take to help communities with gas drilling, impacts on their communities. So for those that are very much in favor of gas drilling, I ask you to recognize that industrial development doesn't affect everyone the same. However, no one, not even you, are immune from the light, sound, and safety impacts we've discussed. So please be involved and listen intently to your neighbors. And for those of you that are against gas drilling, our area has seen significant change in the past. As Sandra mentioned, settlers came and removed all the trees. And then there was the electric distribution with all the electric poles being put around, and the railroad expansion at one point in time. And each one of those was met with resistance, some by the Native Americans and then by Americans after that time. But we should be reminded that activists have made an impact. And not too far from here, you may remember about 30 years ago when the Reagan administration wanted to sell the Hector land use area off to private sector, activists in this area stood up and became a national forest. So you can have an impact. I ask all of you to express your truth about the effects of industrialization on the quality of life and the opportunity in the future. And most importantly, listen. So another thought. If gas development does come to our area, then we need to plan to use the financial boom that supposedly happens with this to build assets, to gain assets, to build a community and economy with those resources so that after the gas has been exhausted, we have something to continue to grow with. And finally, I want to thank you all for participating in this. Our democracy was started back in the 1700s because people were activists and they wanted change from the oppression of a distant power. You continue their vision in our democracy by being activists. Thank you. Okay, lights and questions.
Thank you very much. The active drilling, the amount of time that takes with the 1,200 truckloads per well and all that, and the bright lights and the man camps, how much is that for one well? Like, how much time are we talking about?
I believe they're talking in the area of 3 to 4 weeks per well to drill and to make the horizontal turn and so on. And then I believe that they will drill a number of them, so when they get the fracking trucks there, they don't have to just keep running them back in and out. So they would run those. And during that time, they'll be bringing the water and getting it prepared so it's ready to go. One of the slides I showed with a large containment pond would have pipes from that, so that you wouldn't be driving trucks to each one. So if that condition exists, you're not having to move on, then that helps speed the process up as well. What I understand is that the gas drilling process, the number of times they come back and refracking and so on, could be 30 to 50 years.
But some of those pictures that you show actually, once they get it set up and you look at it from the air, it's kind of calm, and there's a holding tank here, a pond here and a pond there, and there's a tower here, and there's no trucks, and there's no new roads, and it looks as though you go through a 3 to 4 week period of total disruption, and then there may be a period of years of sort of peace. Is that true?
Well, because I think Lou mentioned that they will be coming back roughly once a year to refract, to stimulate the well again. So you'll have another group of activity until they decide to stop fracking. And then if they decide they want to move to another layer of shale or limestone or sandstone to extract,
and they have
then
to
continue to go. So I think that assuming that once they've drilled the well that they're going to leave, will not be like what you've seen up north of here of conventional drilling where they go into a pocket and then extract the well from that. I believe it's going to be different from that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for coming and speaking.
Sure.
I'd like to ask you now, if you would, and the rest of our speakers later, to include in your comments some ways that this community and other communities can do something to help each other stop fracking in the form that it's coming. Thank you.
Sure. I'll just take a brief chance to answer that question. A lot of the regulation that we've been working on is state and federal, and so those are the people that you need to talk to about changing it, but that doesn't mean the local governments don't have some power and that they should be exerting it. And Helen Slache will be talking briefly, speaking after me. This is more her field about areas that local governments can take and how you as individuals, how landowners coalitions, and how local governments can bring about change and affect the process. So there are a number of things, a number of options out there. Most of them are being tried, and that's exactly what we need to do. Hi, Becky.
Hi, Don. Thank you very much. I think your presentation was very informative. I do have a question on the finance. Now, I mean, we all understand that people who decide to enter into contracts with the gas companies work out some financial arrangement. There are costs to the community, however, I mean, whether it's repairing roads or first responders having cleaning up spills or whatever might come up. How is that financed? I mean, does the individual community, the township, let's say, receive any money from the company or from the state? Or is all of this, I truly don't know the answer to this. Is it all borne by the individual taxpayers of that community? Thank you.
Sure. There are stories from Madison County and Shenango County where the taxpayers have had to bear the bulk of the cost for this. And there are stories from Pennsylvania where the gas companies have come in and trained the emergency service volunteers, as well as they realized the roads cannot. Pictures that we saw showed that they can't even get their trucks down the road without a bulldozer pulling it. So they will actually be reconstructing the roads so that they can get their fracking trucks to come down. So local governments need to spend time developing road preservation laws to help protect the taxpayers from this type of cost, and we're hoping that the state legislature will provide a clear pathway to make that happen, because at this point in time it's still a convoluted mix of laws that are contradictory. Are we done? All right, I'll come back. Thanks.